It was noontime today in the center of Beijing when a man walked to the middle of the Avenue of Eternal Peace,
All right, welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Today, we're going to talk about water. We just did an episode on what to do about electricity when lights go out for short term and long term. And basically, I wanted to hit what do you do about water when lights go out for short term, long term? A lot of us have we come off municipal water, and if you live in the city or the town, the water shuts off. You have water for a little while. Kevin, how long? Usually a couple hours, right?
Usually a couple of days.
Oh, days even in
Yeah. So
municipal.
a power failure is going to, cause problems, obviously, but most municipal water systems have at least a 3-day setup with generators and stuff like
Okay.
that. If you're on a smaller water system, that might not be the case. Most water that you get from your town or county, wherever, it comes from a water tower. So you have the water in the water tower that's going to supply the pressure.
And that's a lot of water.
And that is a lot of water, but there's a lot of people that are drawn from it too. So,
Okay.
so I mean, it varies, and you might want to look into it. Everybody's going to be different. Figure out where your water comes from.
What would you do? Would you call your local water department, or how do
Yep.
you
Yeah, you can call them up. Every year they're supposed to put out an annual water quality report, and it'll tell you what's in the water and all that sort of stuff. And,
yeah,
and all sorts of nonsense. Different states, different, but most of the United States, you've got a day or two. When your power goes out before the water you start losing water pressure.
Okay. And that would be the same for sewer? Like, how long do we have before it starts backing up into my house when things go bad?
It won't back up. It'll just run over into the river, and
okay. It just keeps going.
It just keeps going out. It's just not, you're just polluting all your water systems. So, there is actually, while we're talking about this, we should mention, like, you used to be able to just take water out of a stream or a river
and drink
it. Yeah, that was okay. 99% of the time you'd be just fine. That's not the case anymore. So they say 51% of rivers and streams, 55% of lakes, and 20% of estuaries are polluted to the point where you shouldn't swim in it, fish in it, or drink out of it, obviously.
Now, I do feel like the standard for swimming in it has to be a lot lower than drinking it.
Right.
Is that
right?
Is that a thing, or?
Yeah, that is the case. But I think they say swimming because you get water in your mouth. I remember swimming in the Hudson River as a kid. And it was all in my mouth and stuff. And now as an adult, I look back and I read the reports, and they find fecal coliform in that river all the time.
Oh, Kevin.
So where does that pollution come from?
Well, it comes from your sewer plant.
Well, it comes from the sewer plant when the power's
it's not working properly. Yeah.
For the most part, it's industrial agriculture runoff. That's what it is. It's animal waste, it's pesticides, it's stuff like that. Another big one is domestic sewage. So when people have like septic tanks, they don't pump them out when they're supposed to. And then it rains and it overwhelms, and it just flushes that stuff right out in a little stream or whatever, and it ends up getting into the river and and gets everybody sick. So Giardia is the big problem with drinking out of streams.
And that's beavers pooping in your stream, or is that what's that?
That is, but the beavers got it because hikers and
pooped in the stream first.
Yeah, they were pissing in the stream, and they infected the beavers, and now the beavers are infecting everybody else.
Now, what is it about people that make them want to piss in the stream? Can you explain that one to me mentally?
It sounds like a toilet. You know what I mean? It has that special ring, that special sound,
It's like a little bit closer to home, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And just as a general, rule, don't piss in streams. You
Okay.
know, piss in the dirt. It'll kind of filter some of that stuff out.
Okay. All right. Piss in the dirt. And then be like my dog where you kick a little dirt back over it when you're done.
Right. I don't know what the deal is with that. All the dogs do that. I don't know why.
Yeah, there you go. So, hey, that's that way it's a surprise when you come up. You don't see dog poop everywhere. But
Right. You just step in it and you could
now,
smell
now
it.
we're going to talk about some off-grid ways to get water. But
Right.
there are more so all right, so we have municipal water and we could probably be storing water in our house if we live in the city and have municipal water. We're going to talk about rain catchment off roofs in a minute, but I looked at those big, like you see a pallet, the metal frame with the plastic container for water storage.
Yeah, those
Now
are called
those
totes.
totes, right?
Yeah.
So here's the thing with those: you can buy them; they're reasonably cheap for brand new, but the shipping is impossible.
Hmm.
Like I actually messaged, I searched online for them. They're around $200 for a nice, good, clean tote, whatever. And all kinds of places sell them. And they're like, yeah, if you want it delivered to your house, expect about, I actually got quotes and they were like $630 for delivery.
Ooh, shit.
And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah, because you're looking at $2 to $4,
Right.
$600 to buy one.
So when I look at Craigslist or Marketplace, they say anywhere from $50 to $90 I can go buy a used one, or
Hmm.
50 to 150, I guess, depending how clean and nice. Now they all say food grade, right? When I see the ads, I mean, they're not all food grade. Don't get
Right.
misunderstand that. So if it is food grade, it's got to have a green lid and a green like nozzle spout.
Hmm.
Right? If it doesn't have the green, it wasn't technically food grade. Now, the problem is, even if they bought food grade, what did they use it for?
Right.
Like, did
They
they
didn't have to
keep
store
pouring
food in
clean
it.
water in there? Right?
Hmm.
Well, yeah, but did they keep clean water in there the whole time? Or did they use it to keep chlorine in there or, some horrible chemical? Now, a lot of them that I see are always like, we used it for detergent and it was double washed, whatever that means.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I don't trust
Now,
that either.
compared here's the thing though. So compared to $600 getting it shipped to my house, I feel like I could actually buy one of those that double washed and then take a sample of that and go get it tested.
Yeah.
Because the testing probably cost me at most $50 if I tested for everything. Usually test is like $20 or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it depends what you're testing for.
Hmm.
If I'm testing for everything in the world, I might be able to get it for like under $100 that testing. That's still cheaper than buying $600 delivered.
Yeah.
So that's one option. The next thing, so I was like, well, that all sounds stressful and like a headache. I looked at Lowe's. Lowe's has these stackable 55-gallon freshwater, storage tanks. It's called
Right.
Water Prepared is the company. And at my Lowe's, every Lowe's is different, but my Lowe's, it ends up costing you $239. And I think you have to like order it, have it delivered to the store and whatever. But 239 ain't so bad. And I know I can go to my and buy clean plastic things at we have like a Rural King now has 55-gallon plastic drums. I do feel like that one of those would make me feel a lot better than when I got off Craigslist and I don't know what's been in there.
Right. Right. One
That's my
thing to keep
thought
in
on it.
mind
Yeah,
is water's heavy. It's 8.34 pounds per gallon.
yeah,
So 55-gallon tote or 55-gallon container is going to weigh 450 pounds.
yeah.
So, you know, don't put that on the second floor if your
In
floor
your
joists
apartment.
are
Yeah.
2x8s.
Okay.
I always see that sort of stuff. People have these back decks, you know,
In
and
the
they
hot
put
tub.
their hot tub on it and fill it up with water and act like it's going to be just fine. It's not going to be fine.
You might
You're
want
going
to
to kill
reinforce
yourself.
a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. So that's one thing. So, water storage, obviously, we can talk about water bottles, keeping gallons of water, finding an extra place like storing stuff under a bed or things like that where it's out of the way and it's stored Kevin, water stores pretty good. I think we talked about just taste goes bad if over time it tastes flat. Is that
Yeah, yeah. I mean, most water that you get has a little bit of air in it, and that is the taste you're used to. Whether you're getting it from a stream or you're getting it out of your faucet, it's always going to have
right?
a little bit of air in it, and you're used to that taste. Um, obviously, gross stuff can grow in water, but if you're putting clean water in a clean container, it's going to stay clean. It's fine. You know, that's the thing, though. You have to make sure your container's clean and your water's clean. Otherwise, you might end up, just making a nice little habitat for bacteria and stuff to grow in there.
Right. Now, the next thing, obviously, a lot of places like towns, they push you into municipal water because they want to pay for running all that pipe to everybody's house. And the idea is if you're like, well, I'm staying on my well, and they try and like force you, oh, you have to go to our thing. And that's because they want everybody paying the bill to have an equal share of the burden of us running the pipe.
Right. Right.
And so if you have that old well set up, keeping it still kinda connected where you could switch one or the other, and
Hmm.
some people use it where they use their well for watering their garden or their yard or whatever, and the other, no, I don't know what the rules are, you'd have to call your local government, and obviously me and Kevin comply with every rule
Every rule.
that the government, would set for us.
Hmm.
But you might wanna check with them on the legality of it. Maybe there's a workaround, like I said, if you just use it for outside irrigation, they might be cool with it or whatever, right? Keeping that backup might be a smart play, I'm just saying. Um, I have a well where I live, and my backup to the backup, basically, because that's obviously opposite,
Hmm.
municipal water. I don't have municipal water, is I have a solar pump that I set up in my well. And that's not an expensive thing. I mean, the well pump cost me 150. Um, because I wanted to be able to isolate the system, I had to buy a pressure tank. That's that blue tank that
Yeah.
you guys have, that whatever. That's part of a well setup that you would have. Now, in theory, you could use the same pressure tank for my electric well and my solar well, but whatever. I have it separate so I can isolate the systems because mine actually come out of two different wells. But they are connected normally where my regular well pump is providing it. So that's an option. 150 for the solar pump, then hose, wire, figure another $100, $150 because they don't give you that long of a wire if you have a deeper well. I think they only like the solar pump I got came in like 20 feet of
Oh, that's
electric wire, and
hmm.
they're like, but it's good for 200 feet. Well, yeah, but I have to power it, so and
Right.
it's
I
in the
need more
well, so
200 feet worth of
I need
wire.
more than 200 feet worth of wire. So I bought the appropriate amount of wire and whatever. So you have that hookup. You need solar panels. I just bought two, I think they're 150-watt solar panels, and
Hmm.
then a charge controller, and then a battery. Now, obviously, if I only have one battery, I can't store that much. It's not going to, last that long. The more batteries, you decide how much of a priority this thing is. If you're just really running water in the day while the sun's cooking,
Hmm.
then it should be okay.
Right.
So
Right. I
that,
think
yeah,
those
where I'm at with
those
that.
solar powered uh
Mhm.
pumps are like a godsend when it comes to preppers and stuff. You know what
It
I mean?
really,
Power failures, and if you have your own well, you're gonna have problems. You're gonna
right,
have problems right away.
right
Power
away.
goes out, you're not gonna have your well running.
Although I have an extra like minute because I have two pressure tanks. That buys
Ooh.
me a little bit more. Except the problem is if you don't know that the water's out and you flush the toilet a couple times, then your extra bonus water is gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. So that's the next. And then we move to more like off-grid prepper solutions.
Right.
Now
Right.
here's where
So
we get crazy. Yeah. What do you
So
got?
let's talk about the basics of cleaning water. So you've got water somewhere, you've got a stream, you got a swimming pool, you got whatever. You got
Yeah.
all sorts of access to dirty water.
Okay.
So
The mud puddle.
all you have to do is filter it and disinfect it.
Now, how do
And
I filter it?
pretty straightforward. Well, the filter, Yeah. So if you've got pretty clean water, you can filter it through just about anything. You can filter it through a shirt as long as it's not as long as it's coming out clear. Then you can disinfect it with a little bit of bleach, 3 drops per gallon.
And
Right.
that's traditional bleach. So
Yeah,
I know they have
that's bleach, not
concentrated stuff.
chlorine. Yeah,
Right.
not concentrated, just regular. I
Okay.
think it's 8.5% is bleach.
Okay.
So that's it. So
And it
I'm
says
sorry.
actually, if you go to the Clorox website, if you want to dig deeper into that, they tell you
Yeah,
how to treat water with it.
yeah,
So,
it's 8 drops per gallon. I
and
think
I
I
don't
said 8
recommend the
drops per gallon.
perfume flavored where it's like spring scent or
Yeah, you don't
whatever.
want
Try
that.
not
You
to
don't
do
want that one in your water, right? And people make mistakes. I've seen that happen where
Yeah,
somebody was taking care of their water system for a little apartment complex, and they
right.
were just adding gallons of bleach, and they got the country fresh one time, and people weren't happy. People weren't happy with
They didn't want country fresh taste.
it. Right. Now, if you when you're getting into dirtier water, you need to set up a better filtration system.
Okay.
So you were showing a picture a minute ago of a basic setup where
Yeah.
it's it's rocks, it's from bottom to top. You're going to fill it with twigs, something to really catch everything above it. Then you're going to have gravel above that, and then a sand filter, charcoal.
Now they always
Charcoal,
say charcoal. What do you know about that? Why are
yeah.
we doing that?
So
That's always
charcoal is
something new.
is
But
great. You can, they always say activated charcoal. It's not regular. Well, it's really regulated. It's regular charcoal. It's the same, does the same shit.
okay.
So you want to get, it's basically the stuff that you have in your fire pit,
Yeah.
the logs that aren't burnt. You
Yeah.
want to get the stuff broken up. You don't want wood. That's not it. You want to break up the charcoal there, smash it up a little bit so it's a little bit finer. And what happens is the more surface area it has, the more it's going to absorb, and it's very porous. And
Mhm.
so microbes, um, chlorine, all that stuff is going to get locked up in that charcoal,
Okay.
and it's gonna filter out the smaller stuff that you can't really see.
Mhm.
It'll clean out lead in your water. It'll clean out all sorts of
Right.
stuff.
And
So
that's it. When you buy one, they almost all are activated charcoal
right,
filters when you go to the
hmm
store and buy one.
right,
Um, I guess that's kind of like what is it, lump coal, where it's the burnt wood they
yep.
call it. And if you
Yeah,
were
you
lazy and
can
didn't
buy
want to
that
make
from the
your own,
store.
right?
You can buy
Just
a
buy a
bag of
bag
that.
of lump
Make
coal,
sure it's not the
not briquettes or
Kingsford that you
yeah,
can,
yeah,
match ready. You don't even need lighter
yeah.
fluid because the lighter fluid's already in there. Don't
Impregnated
use
with
that one.
yeah, with gas basically. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
you don't
you're
want that.
better off,
Right.
making it
Make your own.
yourself.
Right.
Yeah,
All day.
it's not hard.
But and then just what, another layer of sand and then rocks on top of that as
Rocks on
your
top. Yeah, and the
initial
rocks are really
keep the
just to
big
catch,
sticks and
yeah, sticks
leaves
and
and
leaves and stuff. Yeah.
gotcha.
So you're really wanting to filter out, your first setup to be rocks like that to catch the big stuff.
Mhm.
And then the sand to filter out the smaller stuff. And then the charcoal to lock in some of the smaller things that are going to filter right through the sand. Um, you're going to want to run water through it for a little bit because it's going to come out looking black like charcoal.
They
You want
say
to
that with
run
a
it.
brand new store filter too.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it
You want
yeah,
to run it until it's coming out clean, and
100%.
then you still want to disinfect it though. And how do
Yes,
you
I agree, but
disinfect it? I mean, just to be safe.
yeah, you do what you gotta do,
Yeah.
right? Um,
5 minutes of a
so
roll of oil. You can do that on your oven, your camp stove, over a fire. Be a man. Just build the fire.
the big thing is like disinfecting is the key, but also it's not disinfecting. Bleach isn't going to get rid of toxins in the
Hmm.
water. So
Right.
if you have the nuclear waste coming into your stream, the bleach isn't really going to help that.
Right. The
You're
charcoal
still
will.
gonna have a problem. The charcoal will help. Now, am I saying you could take nuclear waste and just run it through some charcoal? Probably, I wouldn't drink it. I'd recommend a no-go on that one,
Wouldn't be a
but
great idea.
it's gonna reduce the amount. That's what we're
Right.
telling you, of toxins that are in there. And
Hmm.
again, you do what you do. I mean, there's always toxins. It's funny, I actually asked, ChatGPT, when I do research, I kind of consult stuff on there, and then I, back it up. I get the information and then find out more. And I was like, oh, my property is agriculture and used to be a tobacco farm, and what should I be testing for in my water? And even ChatGPT was like, that's an excellent question that nobody asks. Let me tell you. And they gave a breakdown, and I'm like, this would cost me $1 million if I set it away to
Yeah.
get tested.
I love
But
how GPT now is like being super polite when you ask a
yeah,
question like, "Oh,
oh,
thank you for asking. What
I
a
know you're
clever
so smart.
question."
You're a great guy. And I'm like, yeah, I am pretty smart. I felt
Uh-huh.
good. I
Chat
walked around with a
GPT
big
just
smile.
blowing
I'm
smoke up
smarter
people's
than
asses.
everybody else. Yep. Yeah, that's how it was. I was like, all right, let's take that. But so then you move on, and we get your water tested. They said like E. coli. They went through like Roundup, they whatever glycol or whatever the hell it is that is Roundup, and they recommended all the different fertilizer chemicals. They said there's usually actually an agriculture package kind of thing of testing that you can do,
Mhm.
like a little. And then they went into heavy metals, and they were like, there's probably an old farmhouse, and I'm like, "Yeah, there is right next to the well." And they're like, "Yeah, you might want to test for lead if you're doing that." And I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah, a
and
lot of those, I think it was sometime in the 1970s when they banned,
yeah, lead.
lead
Yeah,
in
paint.
pipes,
Yep.
but,
Well,
um
pipes
yeah.
and
Yeah, a
paint.
lot of stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, but if you're pre-1970, you might wanna test your water. Yeah, there's a possibility that
for
you have
lead.
lead in your pipes. Not coming from the well,
Right.
not coming from the water mains in your town, but coming from the pipes in your actual house.
Like, yeah, pipes 100%, it's a possibility. My Whether I think the pain is getting down to where the water in my well is coming from, I'm not really that worried about it.
Mhm.
But I know I had my well tested. I mean, that's not a thing, but that isn't like the forefront of my concern. So just something to think about there.
Yeah. And, I mean, honestly, like, we get real wound up about lead. And there's a certain amount of lead that's okay, that's acceptable. I don't know how much lead in your water you're comfortable with,
Yeah.
but
Kevin,
honestly, it
I
kinda
mean, I could use to be a little dumber. ChatGPT already told me I'm like way smarter than everybody else. So
right, right. It's
I'm
true,
just
because
saying.
ChatGPT's yeah, they said it, so it's good. I mean, the truth is, though, lead kinda gives you superpowers, It
Mm,
makes you more aggressive and stupider, and
mm,
that's really what you need in when it comes down to, like, you know, getting into fist fights.
yeah,
Never fight somebody that has less to lose than you?
yeah, yeah.
So
You
the
don't want that.
crazier and stupid and more aggressive you are, the better you're gonna do in a fist fight.
I
But
like it.
if you look at the levels of violent crime
Mhm, mhm,
and overlay it with the lead in water, lead in pipes,
mhm,
it like matches right up. You know, Add 18 years to it because that's how long it takes these kids to grow up and
mhm.
start robbing places. Violent crime has dropped significantly
Since we got rid of lead
since we got
pipes,
rid of lead and pipes. Yeah,
I think
and
that's the connection.
you know,
Ah,
correlation doesn't mean causation, but it seems like
it does in
pretty
Kevin's mind.
obvious.
Yeah. All right. So the next thing we could talk about is so we're back on the well thing. Now
Mhm,
another thing they have something called a well point. Now this is something you can go to Tractor Supply or Lowe's
mhm,
and buy. And basically a well point is like a metal spike with a screen with a point at the end, and then that connects to pipe, like 1-inch pipe or
mhm,
whatever. And you can actually just bang that into the ground and put a hand pump on it,
mhm,
and you might get lucky. Now, I say you might get lucky. Turns out you can do something called a divining rod to kind of figure out where to drill. Now, a divining rod, they do it, sometimes you have the guys with the stick, whatever, but usually people will take like two coat hangers, they'll bend it 90 degrees. And what I've seen people say, oh, I don't want my hands to affect it, but they'll actually take a straw and cut a straw and put it around like the downward post of the metal coat hanger, And so that way you're not affecting it with your hand, like it's floating free kind of in your hand. And basically, if you hold them hanging apart, when you go over water, they'll usually come together. And I always thought it was kind of nonsense, but you can watch videos of guys doing it. And obviously, I gave you the rough overview, right? You
Right.
can dig down on YouTube of how to do it. But honestly, that's pretty much it. I mean,
Yeah,
you're
no,
holding these
you
in your hand.
say that it's true. I've never seen somebody
Right.
do it. I haven't watched a lot
So
of videos. I think it's witchcraft. I
you,
think that you probably are
it
gonna end
could
up
be.
in hell if you try and figure this out.
All right. Well,
But
maybe people just get lucky, right? Hitting the well. So
mhm,
the idea is what they'll do is they'll walk until they come together. And then you want to hit it from like a couple of different angles to kind of prove that
right.
you're right. That's the thing. Like, all right, there's definitely something here. I've had people like map out the whole underground stream I've seen, where it's going there. And so you can tap into that. Again, this is water you still should probably get tested. It's still water out of the ground. You don't know what you're gonna get. But,
Mhm,
you can definitely, put in one of these, and it's basically a pipe, and then you buy one of those little, hand pumps for the top. Believe it or not, a lot of the hand pumps are made with lead and lead paint. And you're like, "Well, that doesn't make any sense because drinking water, and why would I be getting water out if I wanted it not to be clean?" But so just look into what you're buying is what I'm telling you. Um, so these spikes, this spike, and you keep adding pipe. A lot of people get lucky at like 10 and 12 feet and not very deep, but I don't know about lucky. And burying things in the ground is hard. um, I would probably take like a post hole digger and give myself as much of the first like 3 feet that I could get. I
right.
just feel like it's just going to make less resistance and easier as I'm
Mhm,
digging. Um, what people I've seen do is those fence posts, the two handles with the concrete, the
yeah,
fence post pounders, they pound it in with that. If it's sandy and stuff, you probably can get away with that. I've also seen people rig up, you can make like a whole tripod with a weight and a rope, and they like hammer it like you see them hammering the posts at the piers. Have you ever been to a pier when they're doing work? I don't know. Me and Kevin were both in the Navy, so
mhm,
it's kind of normal for us. You just hear that constant banging of these freaking things
right.
just hammering in posts the whole time it's a nightmare. But anyway, you can do that. They make up like a tripod and a weight and a chain and a pulley, and they just keep like hammering it in. That's another way you could go. So again, if you want more detail, search out, well points and how to do that.
Yeah.
But it's pretty
Also,
straightforward. Yeah, go ahead.
Slowburn has a good point. A lot of people have septic tanks. That's a
You don't
common
want to
thing.
put it there. That's a
You
wet
want to
spot.
be 150 feet minimum away from a septic tank, just because it's going to end up leaching into your water, and you're going to be drinking your own piss.
Yeah, exactly. I'd recommend not drinking your own piss.
I mean,
So
Bear Grylls says it's cool, but I'm not into it.
that goes back to the filter. Yeah, no, stay the heck away. That was a good thing to point out. Now maybe you're like, you know what, Chuck? I ain't getting no water out of the ground. I don't know what you're talking about. But again, one of those in your backyard, if you lived in the city, might be kind of cool. Or we'll
Hmm.
say suburbs, right? Like
Right,
if you're in New York City, you're probably not setting up a well point. But if you lived in
right through the sidewalk, man.
Right. If you live in White Plains, maybe. Well,
Hmm.
honestly, if you do it in the city through the sidewalk, it's a good chance you're gonna hit like a power line or maybe water. Um, can I recommend as a good rule for everyone, 811, call before you dig?
Oh,
Kevin,
I've got so many stories about people calling me out, and there's like just water spraying all over their yard,
I
and then
hit
the guy
water.
with the backhoe like, "I don't know what happened."
You don't know. You didn't
Call
call before
before
you
you
dig.
dig.
So
Know
when I
where your
bought
hook lines are
yeah,
on your own property. You should know.
when
You
I
should just know.
yeah.
Call them even if you're not going to dig. Mark it out so you know for future situations.
Exact 100%. When I bought my property, I'm doing a lot of farming, tilling, and I just like to dig holes. I have a tractor, it has a bucket
Mhm.
on it. I'm gonna dig a hole.
It's free. They're not going to charge you anything. They'll come
Bam,
out there for free and
for
mark it
free.
out.
Well, they were like a little weird, like where? And I'm like, I'm farming. It's my whole property. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, but where? And I'm like,
Mhm.
all right, just do this section. And they were like, and then when the guy came out, I'm like, well, what? He's like, no, there's nothing here. Like this is farmland. It's not.
Yeah.
There's nothing. Like, I had like there's crisscross lines in my yard, like my lawn and stuff. But you go back where my fields are, and it's pretty good.
Yeah.
But
And
but
if
I
you
did
live in a
call
house
before I think I did.
yeah, if you live in a house, you should know where your water is coming into your house, and basically between there and the road, it's usually a straight line. But
Yes.
also call somebody because 'cause they'll
And
come out with a metal detector and check it and mark it.
and your power line. Now, again, in a newer house, those power lines, you come from the power line to your meter, that thing's going to be 24 inches deep. I know
Mhm,
this because I called before I dug and they
mhm,
told me. But like any other electric line, like, oh, you have that lamp post at the end of your walk, that's only got to be 12 inches deep.
mhm.
And I'm not saying this advice for when you're laying it. I'm saying be prepared. You might hit something at 12 inches.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. Like in a
Yeah.
cool world, a lot of towns, maybe it's 24 inches for all electrical and
Mhm.
whatever. Then good. But I know where I live, like something extra, you can do like 12 inches. But the and what's even crazier? My internet, they ran that like 2 inches deep, dude. I don't even know how the grass is growing over it. So you don't want to be anywhere near that. Now I have Starlink, no problem. Now I
Mhm.
just clutter up the sky with satellites. So, it's a different thing. But all right. So moving right along. Next thing, you don't want to do a well. How about rain catchment off the roof? Now you need a gutter setup for that. But it's crazy. I couldn't believe the numbers, but they said that you can get 0.62 gallons per square foot of collection surface per inch of rainfall can be collected. So that's a lot of water hitting the roof, Kevin.
Yeah.
Um, that's something. Now they talk about if you're taking it off the roof, obviously there is pollen on the roof. There is, maybe some leaves and debris. Um, I downloaded a PDF from like the Texas Water Department, I think it is, but I have it in the show notes so you guys can download it. It actually is amazing and it takes you through all the water catchment steps. But the big thing is they talk about having a first flush diverter where the water comes in and then basically they have it catch like 2 feet or a foot of pipe, and they'll do like a 6-inch pipe. They say if you have a 3-inch diameter pipe and you have 33 inches, that'll give you a gallon of water. 4-inch pipe, 18 inches, 8-inch pipe, 6 inches. You get the idea. But basically, it comes down. You can have it catch that first little bit, and then you can put a faucet on it to dump it out. And then after that first foot, and you can also like poke holes so it drains out slowly out of the first catchment. So that way you don't have to go drain it every time it rains. That's one more thing. But again, you still are going to want to filter that water, but that's still something to kind of catch it. And like we talked about, you set up big storage containers for your water. So that's another thing. Now, I don't know. What if I'm off grid, Kevin? Like, what if I'm in the woods and I'm like, I need water? Do I have more options?
Yeah, so there are some worse options that
Oh,
that will work,
okay.
like a gypsy well. We've talked
Oh,
about that before,
yes. You have a
right? So
running stream. How do we set that up
yeah, so
exactly?
you're basically gonna want to dig a hole adjacent to the stream and let the water filter through the dirt.
Okay.
You know, you're gonna have muddy water for a little while, so you have to let it sit and settle out.
Mhm.
Um, that's not it's not gonna keep you from, you know, it's
It
not gonna
is.
keep you from really getting sick, but
It's
you're
a
less
natural
likely to get
filter.
sick than if you just drank right out of the stream.
Exactly. And if you could boil it, the combination of the two, you're pretty good.
Mhm.
Pretty good. I mean, again, it's a crapshoot, right? You're drinking water out of a dirt hole. Kevin, you're supposed to
Right.
wash your hands when you play in the dirt. So, I mean,
Right.
there is a level there. There's another way that's actually a little safer. and that's called like tapping a tree. Now, have you
Right.
seen this tapping a tree in the woods
Hmm.
for survival? So I've seen you can actually just dig a hole with a knife, and if you push a stick in there, like usually you'd whittle a stick clean
Hmm.
and jam it in the hole in the fall and like that, it'll drip water out along that stick, and then you can put something to catch it underneath. Um, I don't know if you guys have ever seen, now that would be good with like birch trees, like anything you think of people getting sap really is
Right.
the kind of, so your maple, I think even oak trees, to be honest.
Yeah.
The They actually sell metal pipes that you can kinda hammer in. They
Hmm.
sell metal pipes with a hook that you could hang a bucket on. Um, that little pipe and hook, they're like 10 bucks will get you like 4 of them or something, but that's something you could actually do where you could keep that in your go bag as just kinda one more option that you
Hmm.
have.
Yeah, it's gonna be slow. It's not gonna,
So
it's not gonna come out like a faucet or anything. It's gonna be a
no.
little drip, and you're gonna have to set something underneath it and wait.
And you kinda, like, want, like, 1 per tree if you don't want the tree to die. Again, use common sense, right? Like, if there's, like, a 4-foot diameter tree, you probably get away with 2, right? Just, you do you, right?
Hmm.
Another thing to think about is, this one's a little crazier, a solar still. Now, this is they talk about people doing on a, like, if you're stuck on a boat out in the ocean,
Hmm.
something like that, you can actually you would put the salt water around like a bucket or whatever you're going to catch it in, and
Hmm.
then run a piece of plastic with a low point, and then as the sun shines on it, that's the solar part, the water would evaporate, and then as it goes up into the air, it's going to condensate. And so they put the plastic over it with like a rock in the center, because that low point, the water is going to go to it and then drip down into the bucket. Now if you didn't have salt water and you had no water, hence we need a water still, you could put like vegetation around it, anything that's going to have moisture in it, that's going to evaporate and then go back in with that same setup. Just look up a quick picture on the internet if you don't really see it in your mind how I'm talking about it. I gotta say, it's absolutely a good trick to have in your back pocket. Again, not super fast, but it is something that will get you water. It obviously depends on the humidity and everything where you are, how much sun you're getting. But it is another trick, but that's something where you're going to need overnight. That's not going to be something that you're going to set up and get in 20 minutes, most likely.
Right.
Um, but that is a cool trick for off grid and, whatever. Now, if you do have toxins in your water and it's kind of bad, you can actually make a still and distill water where you basically boil it, and it turns out you let the steam rise up and then you catch the evaporation, like condensation. It evaporates out of the boiling pot, and then you let it condensate into a new, and that's the same way an alcohol still kind of works. You can make clean water that will be very clean.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
that is
distilled water.
another option to purify water.
Now, I see a lot of people talk about like you can't drink distilled water. You can. Some people are more sensitive. I mean, historically, for the past 10,000 years, people haven't been drinking distilled water because
Yeah.
it's not a thing. But I mean, a lot of the drinking water you get is distilled water. It's what do they call it? Reverse osmosis, and they say purified water. If the bottle of water you get says purified water, that's distilled water. It's not great for you. You're probably
No.
better off with spring water if you're gonna
Well,
pick one.
Kevin,
But
what I do now, this is my own personal what I
mhm.
do. If I'm just drinking distilled water, I just eat a handful of dirt when I
There
do
you
it
go.
too, and then
Problem solved.
it balances out,
Yeah.
You gotta
Now
put a
they
little of that back in.
yeah. Now they say if you're on a starvation, if you're in a starvation situation, you have no access to food.
Mhm.
You're gonna last a lot longer if you drink at least 1.5 liters of water a day. If
Okay.
you can't access food, you need to up your intake of water, and it'll help. You're still gonna starve to death eventually,
Eventually, you're gonna
but it'll
die,
help.
but
Yeah.
yeah. So those are pretty much your water solutions. And they're not amazing, but I gotta say there's a lot of neat things. And like rain catchment is a big thing. And honestly, digging a good well, you can also hand dig a well. But again, you got to find a spot. There's going to be water, and you're going to have to shore up those sides,
Yeah.
to make sure that it's not collapsing back in. You always see the big concrete cylinder, but you could do it with a pipe. You had a big metal pipe or something, you
Hmm.
could do it. So keep that in mind, but there's a lot of different ways. But the big thing is to look at this stuff and maybe get those few supplies beforehand.
Good
Kevin
point.
recommends
Good point.
keeping some bleach on hand. I know we
Yeah.
talk about that because being able to treat stuff if you're unsure about it. Now, if you set up a well beforehand, you can get it tested and you don't have to worry about the bleach. But these are the things to do, and it's being a prepper. You prepare. So that's it. You do it beforehand. You find the way to solve the problem. So that's what I got. Anyway, questions, concerns, email us at preppingbadass@gmail.com. Otherwise, I would say stay safe, and we will talk to you guys next week.